I want to talk about, you landed in Colombia and then you had basically a kind of a similar agency, competitive agency to predictable revenue, and that you had, hundreds, millions, thousands you had the whole country of Colombia working for you as a sales development,
No, I did not.
right?
There's 5 million people in the city of Medellin, and I had 265. So we were talking 0.00001%. But I love the compliment, and I take it and accept it, and thank you for that. But it was definitely not the majority of people.
Not the whole country of Colombia. Okay, maybe I exaggerated a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, I think talk to me about, because I think one of the things that I hear is, because we have people based in Mexico and we've got some people, spread throughout Latin America. One of the comments I hear is, okay, well, internet infrastructure, and then the English level. Like, how are you finding it in Colombia versus anywhere else in the world?
Wow. So, okay, we want to have some real conversation. The government in Colombia and Latin America purposely have pulled back their people financially. They have literally neglected the fact that the wealthiest country in the world is 3 hours away. It's as if their eyes were closed to seeing the trillions of dollars pouring into the Philippines. They are extremely behind when it comes. English is probably 1% here, right? And it's a shame because income levels are not that high, right? And it's different for an American living in Colombia or Mexico that's working the U.S. dollar and conversion rates. But the level of English here is very low. But the good news is that we don't need 50 million people to succeed, right? I think we need the 1% of 50 million people that speak fluent English. So just like you have people in Mexico, it's like people always say that. They're like, what about the language? What about this? I'm like, and then I just went back. I'm like, what about if you just keep the same standards you have for hiring and you just only hire people that meet your standards? So it's like you kind of control what you get by having a filter. So it's like all of a sudden, if you hire in America and you have these standards, you keep the same standards. So then nobody who doesn't meet these standards, they're not going to interview with you. If somebody speaks only Spanish, you're not going to talk to them. But all of a sudden, if you get somebody who's fluent in English, highly motivated, going from $1,000 a month to $2,000 is a 100% raise, right? Try to do a 100% raise on 80K. Now you're at 160. Try to do a 100% raise on what they're getting paid 15K. Now you're at 30. It's the law of doubling, right? So it's easier numbers to double when you're lower, right? It gets a little bit dangerous at higher numbers. And, I think there's even more opportunity. There's a lagging opportunity. Like there's not a Colombian I don't talk to that I'm like, you don't speak English, you want to be successful, you'll make 10. There's not one sign here that says speak English, you'll make 10 times more money. It's a fact, but there's not one sign. So I feel like I'm doing the job that the government's not doing. I feel like we live in a world where it's like almost the same thing as like SpaceX and these things where like if you rely on the government, it could take forever. But I don't need the government. I go on TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn and I can tell millions of people speak English will get you out the call center. They're not doing it. So I just kind of started doing it myself to be transparent. And I feel great about it because I feel like I'm helping individuals get the most awesome jobs. But I also feel like I'm helping hardworking CEOs and entrepreneurs retain profit so they can reinvest in their product or service. And that's what it's all about, right? It's all about, everyone's like, keep jobs in America. Don't let, like almost as isolationism. And I'm like, America's a melting pot of everybody anyways. You know what I mean? It's like, you have everything there anyways. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like interestingly enough, we've gone through like a globalization where I think the people are questioning now, like, should we, manufacture everything in China? Should Europe be buying all of its oil from Russia? Probably not, right? So I think that we're in a reverse isolationism when it comes to products and manufacturing. But I think when it comes to digital, we're in a massive globalization push. And so I think it's opposite, where like companies are going to want to not build their products elsewhere and try to bring it back home, but probably work elsewhere, I think.
Totally. I remember 5 years ago, we opened the office in Merida in Mexico. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little town. I fell in love. We hired 3 people in like a week. It was great. And it seemed everybody was intellectually curious about us having an office in LATAM, but nobody was doing it. And now it seems that there are so many more teams that are based in LATAM or augmented, or, it's very common to get on a call and people are, from all over the world. And I think, COVID is probably a huge kind of push in the right direction to get us going there. But I would totally agree. I mean, the thing that I always struggle with when I was hiring solely in Canada and Vancouver was, one, you're limited to your geography, right? Like if you want people to drive into an office, I wanted to be downtown. People had to be prepared to drive into the office. And, Vancouver's a small city, but we got some rough traffic. And so if you're living out in one of the suburbs, you didn't want to work downtown. I couldn't access you. And so I wasn't just limiting myself to Vancouver. I was limiting myself to like Vancouver downtown, Vancouver and like 20 kilometer surrounding radius. That's about 12 miles, in case you...
Not to mention that I actually saw something recently on LinkedIn that said that you'd have to earn like $350,000 a year in Vancouver to be able to pay for your mortgage in 30 years, like some kind of crazy stat. So like,
yeah, it's rough, man. It's a really weird place where you've got this mix of like people that have grown up here, and you've got Amazon, Facebook, Salesforce bringing in engineers that are making $250K. And what we found was like, you're spot on. The cost of living was so high that even though I was paying what I thought were fairly generous, above market salaries, the cost of living kept going up and up and up. That like, if you really want to spoil somebody, you got to pay a junior or kind of mid-level person $100,000 a year.
And they're spending it all too. They're not saving anything, right? So like you pay $100,000 a year, they have no savings.
Pressure.
They're feeling pressure. You pay someone $20,000 a year and they could save 5-10. So it's like, if you look at things percentage rise, like, is it better to save 0% of what you're earning and make $100K, or would you be better to save 20% of your paycheck? So yeah, I can see those. And another thing that you didn't mention about Vancouver is that a lot of the times, if cost of living is high, it's because like other countries that came up, they pour their money in there. So China has been making billions for the last 20 years. And a lot of local successful Chinese, they don't trust the Chinese government. So they bury their money into Vancouver, as they should. And that's what happens.
Lovely here.
What's the demographic that owns Vancouver?
I don't know, but you can't blame them. Like
I want to Google it.
It's great here. I mean, like, yeah, there are many stats, and I've read. I don't know the numbers off by hand. It is one of the theories of why why price of housing. I don't think it's just China though. It's like Vancouver's just a nice place, and like you go to any nice place anywhere in the world, and if it's a good spot,
33% of total housing in Vancouver is owned by Chinese nationalists.
There you go. I mean, there's a huge Chinese population. I think what Vancouver's trying to crack down on was the foreign ownership of like people that don't live here, that just bought property as like an investment.
But it makes sense because they're taking good profit and they're burying it in good markets where they're making money on it. But it doesn't benefit the local business owner, and it doesn't benefit the local people. The same way that what I'm doing in Colombia or Latin America, it does hurt Colombians that don't speak English. There will be a divide between those that speak English and those that don't. I don't necessarily know how to fix that, right? So I think whenever you have, it's like osmosis, when you ever have a flow or opportunity, like it'll flow from one direction to the next, right? So it's like,
yeah,
it's hard. It's challenging, but that's the world we're living in. We're living in a world where like you got a combination of manpower, items and goods, and like you got to figure out, like in Colombia, like if you buy, for instance, cars, they're 40% more. So go buy a Ferrari and you're going to pay $400,000, right? Or something like that. So it's not everything. So I feel like leaders need to get in the heights of understanding the globe and the map and looking at it like building a cake and taking the right ingredients from the right places. That's what manufacturing companies do, right? But you should just look at it like you're a manufacturing plant of profit, which is a combination of technology, process, and people, right?
Totally. I think the thing that I looked at was like, I want to be able to invest in my people. I want to be able to, not spoil them is the wrong word, but I want to be able to spend money on them and like surprise them and make them feel, do things that are outside of, what they would expect from a normal employer. And it just got extremely hard in Vancouver because everything was so tight. Everybody was so tight that it was really hard to hire, retain, and keep people or in the business.